Welcome. Hi, this is Steve Bonoff with the PIM, and you have registered and now attending the another meeting of the Printing Industry Midwest Financial Executives Council. And we've got a number of attendees here from around the country. So this is a regular event that PIM holds. We've been holding it since COVID 2-3 times a month, keeping our members really up to speed on keeping their financial and their business operations moving while the industry is in quite a bit of turmoil. So I want to thank everyone for being a part of this event today. It's really going to be a special occasion. I think it's an honor to, and I so respect the panelists on our call today, willing to kind of step up and talk about the industry, talk about their businesses in the face of competition. We all know that these are friendly competitors, as we all are in the region, but that the reason why you belong to PIM, the why you're here, is that while it might be a tagline, it really is true that together we are stronger. And so we really appreciate their willingness to participate. So on the call today, we're going to have Gary Garner, head of GLS Companies, Mike Lane, Myers Printing, Tom Moe with Daily Printing, and Brian Turbeville from Wallace Carlson. Now, many of these gentlemen have been longtime supporters of PIM. Gary was a former chairman on the board. Mike Lane is currently on the board. Tom Moe is the chair of the PIM Educational Foundation. And so, Brian, we're just up to you now.
Time to step up.
Time to step up, all right. And then, of course, our facilitators today, we have Mel Enger and Rick Riesgraf from LB Carlson. They've been doing amazing work keeping our members up to speed throughout the payroll protection drama and ongoingly with all of the tax implications and the reporting implications that have come with the territory over these last few months. And also Ken Ryan is on the call. He'll be chiming in, CFO of Daily Printing. He's co-chair along with Mel of the Financial Executives Council. From a technical perspective, you have two opportunities to participate today. You can chat in questions. Those are more for technical questions about problems you may be having. I appreciate if you would use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see Q&A. Type in your question. We'll make sure it gets answered. And then from a view perspective, you'll see all the panelists if you click and on gallery view. If you want to click speaker view, where you're only seeing the person live who's talking, then click speaker view. If it says gallery view in the top right of your screen, then it actually is on speaker view. Don't ask me how Zoom manages that. Want to turn it over now to our moderator, both Mel and Rick. I'll chime in where necessary with any other questions, but I'm going to leave it up to these gentlemen to keep the conversation moving. And again, the panelists, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Mel, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Appreciate that, and I'd just like to say thanks to our panel members too, taking the time out of the day and also to prepare for this. I've been looking forward to this. I hope it'll be interesting. What we've tried to do here is come up with a series of questions for our panel members to address. And for the most part, these are questions that Rick and I have been hearing in the industry, talking to clients. So hopefully they'll be relevant. And also, as Steve mentioned, please chat in some questions too, because I'm sure you have other questions than we have listed here. And we'll try to get through them all. Steve will interject or interrupt us at time to time if a question comes through, or if we have time at the end, we'll address questions at that time too. So the way we're going to do this is Rick and I are going to go back and forth and ask our panel members various questions. These first couple are really meant for all four of our panels to respond to. And I'll just based on where people are on my screen, I'll just start with Brian from Wallace Carlson. This is a question that I've been asked a lot about if you're willing to share how much your revenue was affected, and in most cases, I guess, down during the COVID period of, I'll say, April through June. So Brian?
So we're actually up year to date, 8% from last year. And that's maybe a little bit tainted. We did an acquisition at the end of last year, and that's a part of the revenue that's not showing up yet. It hasn't caught up with the year to date totals. But at the same time, we were on a roll. We were projecting 35% growth this year, and we landed a couple of additional clients, and things were going good. And COVID certainly changed that a little bit. So through April through June, we're down 4% year over year. Year to date, like I said, we're up 8%. And our worst month was June. So that's when we took the big hit, and things are starting to come back.
Thank you, Brian. Mike?
You know, I think, Mel, I'd answer that question maybe a little different rather than year over year, pretty much more from a demand standpoint. As we look at demand on the label side of our business, it has been relatively steady with the current client base. Now, we're down from last year because we had a couple major pieces of business that clients stopped doing, primarily in promotional and consumer coupon work. So that went away and affects the numbers a little bit. But label down only slightly. The other side, our wide format retail side of our business, so wide format digital and flexo, or digital and litho, we've been tracking down anywhere from 40 to 60% off a 4-week trend if we look at the 4-week segments this year compared to the same time a year ago. So the mall-based retailers, as we all know, have maybe been hurt more than others, but this retail market is in an absolute topsy-turvy environment today, trying to figure out where the new sense of normal is going to come from with this online versus in-store versus pickup versus what does a brand do, what does a brand not do. So retail has been and is going to continue to be, I think, really difficult to navigate.
Thank you, Mike. Gary?
Well, our business for April through June was down about 9%, but we had I'm not particularly religious, but I tell everybody, by the grace of God, we had a couple of new pieces of business that started our year strong. And so for the first half of the year, we're up 17% over the first half of last year. Historically, July for us is the worst month of the year, and this year was no exception. August came in real good. September looks good. October looks good, and then I have no idea what our business looks like and going forward. But we've been, we're thankful that we are where we are. So we're up 17% first half of the year.
Thanks, Gary. Tom?
Yeah, we didn't fare so well at that point. We're on fiscal year. Our fiscal year ended March 31st, and we ended last year up, not quite at our plan because of the hit we took in March. But for May, June, it really was about the second week of April, May and June. We saw about a 50% decline in the demand for our stuff, primarily due to two of our verticals. We're pretty significant with some luxury travel business, and of course they took it first because of what was going on in Europe. So we saw that business start to decline in February, and so May and June were pretty tough. But we were fortunate. We have a couple of new pieces of business that came online about the same time. So we saw a pretty good bounce back starting the end of July, first part of August, now through September and October looks really strong as well.
Thanks, Tom. Rick, you got the next question?
Yeah, the next question was going to be, how do you guys see the last 3 months of the COVID economy? And you guys have kind of answered that, but maybe I can ask it a little differently. Do you see the COVID impacted economy coming back some in the last 3 months versus the first 3 months, or don't you? Is there any confidence building on that? Gary, or go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Gary.
That's a great question, Rick. As I said earlier, is that our business seems to be stabilizing. We have I apologize, my phone's ringing here. Hold on. Our business is stabilized. We do have a lot of activity. We're working harder than ever at trying to figure out how to solicit for more business. But we feel pretty good about how we're positioned through the end of the year. But right now, we just have no idea what it looks like for next year at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think anybody that says they do is had one too many nips maybe in the process. Because, you know, this thing is so uncertain. If you could answer the question on a viable vaccine, it might clear up some uncertainty for all of us. But I think what we're going to see, at least, you know, we got to get this crazy election over with and all the uncertainty that's kind of around that, but more importantly, we've got to get to some sense of a feeling that people can go out and can interact, and it's safe to do that. It's open. And I say that at the same time, I think that we're going to see some permanent changes out of this. I think the way people do business, I think the way people interact, I think the way we found out how we can save some money and run our business is a little different, is going to affect us for a long time. So that's our question right now, is trying to position our sales organization, our revenue generation piece of it in a way that gives us some leverage over the next few months as you watch this uncertainty begin to unfold a little bit as we get the election and the vaccine in front of us and we know what's going on that way.
Brian?
Probably a lot of the same. To predict what next week is going to be at this point versus next month can prove to be challenging. It has been, small business clients are probably down 50, 60, 70%. So that basic down and dirty print, the everyday brochure, pocket folders, just the basic print that we all do some of, it has probably taken the biggest hit. Trade shows, literature for that. Printing's a contact sport. You're handing somebody a brochure, they're picking up literature, they're doing, you know, there's some interaction, and COVID has certainly changed that. Trying to get clients to redirect dollars that would have been spent on something else and put it into a marketing campaign or things like that. So it's, you know, I feel pretty good about the end of this year. I feel our, you know, internally, just being slightly up and what might end up to be, you know, level to last year's sales, maybe up a little bit, almost feels like a loss. You know, it still doesn't feel like a win. And yet I know there's many out there that have, you know, bigger dip than that. So it's so hard, and there is no predicting. I don't know. So
Tom, this, I do want you to address the question that Rick had asked, but you were geared up for the next question as well. So I'll ask you at the same time, because some of these questions are similar in nature. Sure. But not only what does the rest of 2020 look like for you, Tom, but then what are your thoughts on this is a question I get asked a lot about the print industry in general. What do we think about it, and what do we think where the industry is going in 2021, and what are some of the concerns there? So it's kind of a dual question, Tom.
Yeah, you know, we definitely see that. I think there's been some confidence return to the business, right? We've seen some of the verticals that and some of the clients that really got quiet early on in the process have started to come back. They've determined that, you know, what they need to do in order to start to grow their business. And I, you know, I think what gives us a confident feeling is knowing that as we've seen our demand now increase significantly, we still have some verticals that we spend a lot of time in that haven't come back online yet, that are just starting to talk about coming back, October, November timeframe. So that gives us confidence for the rest of the year. And I think the industry, we've been taking shots. Everybody likes to take shots at the printing industry for the last several years, every chance they get, and we continue to weather the storm. And we actually seem to even, increase above what a lot of people think in some areas. There are some things that have changed and aren't coming back. I think that's going to continue to happen every time something like a watershed event like this happens. The big factors for me moving forward for next year, I think Mike already brought them up. What happens if we get a bad fall and winter, and we see a big resurgence of COVID, which they're calling now the Twin Towers COVID flu season, and we don't have a viable vaccine. And then, of course, November 3rd's election, I think, has got a lot of uncertainty wrapped around that as well. So we're confident through this year, but like everybody else, I've got no clue what's going to happen after November, December, and moving into 2021. So as an industry, I think we've seen a lot of changes already, and we've seen a lot of people pivot early on with the pandemic. We saw a lot of people start to produce maybe some non-traditional items out of their manufacturing facilities. And I think that just, again, proves that our industry is extremely viable and we're easy to adapt. And I think we can continue to do that. As we go along, we're going to have to continue to do that. I don't think it'll be as robust as it was, September, October of last year, but, we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Tom. Rick, you had the next question there, I believe.
Yeah, and you guys are touching on this. As COVID has impacted the economy, there's been other factors, even the unrest certainly, and the election. But the question was framed in the terms of a negative, but I'm going to change it around. So what COVID impacts do you see at your company that are going to stick with you permanently, good or bad? Do you see some things that you've changed in the business? Mike, you alluded to that a minute ago. Do you have anything specific to share, maybe?
Well, I think I happened to make a trip to Kansas this past weekend. First time I really traveled since March. And I think this concept of touching things, pushing buttons, opening doors, reading printed materials is going to be impacted as a result of this coronavirus going forward. And I think there's some issues around not only packaging and product, but printed materials and how we interact or how we touch those if we perceive somebody else touched something. Now, I don't know if we're going to get to antimicrobial printing as a coverage on everything we print, but I think what we've known all our lives in touching and interacting with things literally without concern at all is going to be impacted some way. And I don't know, and there's probably negative and positive in that. I think the second thing that three answers really for me on this one, Rick. The second one is I think we're going to see M&A accelerate. I think the PPP funds helped some struggling firms and were kind of a lifeline, so to speak, for businesses that maybe already were a little bit shaky, and they've pushed that timeline out a little bit. But the longer COVID goes, the more there's uncertainty. This M&A thing is going to pick up because there's a lot of money on the sideline, and there's a lot of people interested in rolling things up, whether they make sense or not. It's a whole nother issue. And then I would say third, I think for us, maybe retail more than some of the other gentlemen on this call, what's going to happen to consumer shopping behavior as a result of COVID, and understanding, if I've been buying online and I'm really comfortable with that for the last 6 months, have I really changed my shopping habits? And I don't need to go into a store. And if I don't need to go into a store, what are all the implications for that we would take back? I think that's the question you got to ask yourself and try to frame in terms of where do you go and how do you position your business to take advantage of the opportunities that'll be out there.
Thank you, Mike. So for Brian, Tom, or Gary, do you have any other additions to the question about permanent changes in the industry?
I think it's going to change how we approach our customers and how we prospect for business. We're we're spending a lot of time on baseline data work and data processing and personalization techniques and video to approach customers, way more targeted, much more personalization. The customers are looking for hard numbers on ROI, and that's a very confusing thing to me. But you know, it's not going to get any easier. We're focusing all of our efforts on automation and data work and personalization. So, and trying to eliminate as much labor as we possibly can,
Right.
because it is extremely difficult for us to get labor at this point. Very hard.
Brian or Tom, anything to add?
So go ahead, Tom.
From our standpoint, you know, I guess some of the changes that we've seen, we're relying on our technology a lot more. You know, we've closed down the building to outside. Our vendors aren't allowed to come in, so they've had to adapt on how they're approaching us, just like we're having to adapt on how we approach our customers and things like that. And I agree. I think that, you know, there's a desire to get back to having face-to-face meetings, but I don't see the large meetings and the congregating in larger groups in a conference room coming back. And I don't know that I'm going to miss that. I think there's going to be more time in the day for us to do, like Gary mentioned, doing some of the things that we need to do now. So.
Yeah.
You know, Gary, I think, you know, your touch on this labor issue is really an important one, because at the same time, we may be in a business that's significantly impacted by COVID. There are other industries that are absolutely on a tear, and they're looking for talent, and they kept compensation levels up. And so for those of us that have gone through a situation here for months, where we've had employees on reduced compensation as we've tried to preserve cash, as we've furloughed employees, we've gotten to a point where we're kind of beyond what most folks are willing to deal with if they have a chance to go across the street and go to work for somebody else. So I think there's nobody on this call necessarily it's a corrugate producer, but if you're in the corrugate business today, business is good, right? You're shipping a lot of products to go into consumers' homes, and they're looking for talent, and they haven't cut compensation. So in the midst of this COVID situation, I think labor is a critical issue to effectively manage because of the competitive factors. You could lose some talent you could not replace.
Brian, did you have anything on this issue, the permanent changes?
No, I don't know. I have a lot to add. I found myself walking through our conference room today and wondering when we're going to use it again, right? So is it now wasted space? Things are absolutely different. I believe all things that fade out also come back into popularity, and people are starving for something more than this interaction that we have going right now. I know I am, and I am tired of COVID, as everybody is. But I believe there will be back to interaction. I think there will be meetings. I think travel will pick up. I don't know that we'll see that through the end of this year, but I believe into 2021. And as travel picks up, that allows people to get more comfortable to have meetings and talk, and maybe for trade shows to pick back up, and sports events to start putting fans back in the stadium, and all of those things. People need to get out onto the street and start moving around to drive a certain element of what we do. Now, if you're in the packaging side, and that's an area that we grew a lot over the last 3 years. So that's held our numbers, is that packaging side, not corrugated, Mike, but just packaging in general. The box in a box, that's the life we live in today. And that and the little instruction sheets that go in those boxes, whatever they might be. Those are two elements that we've capitalized on. and has really held our numbers for the year. The other interactions, it's going to take one step to create the next, and so on and so on. And I think it will come back. I just don't know about 2020. I think it'll be into 2021.
Thank you, Brian. Gary, I'm going to start with you on this next one. It's what your thoughts are on the 3 toughest management issues you've had to face the past 6 months, and if you're willing to share maybe some of the initiatives you put into place.
That's for me.
It is, but we can.
All right. Well, you know, I thought about that a little bit. And a couple of notes that I put together is one of the things that we're really been struggling with is managing the peaks and valleys in our business, particularly, as I said before, with the labor and hiring temp workers to help get the work out when we have it, and yet being able to have some flexibility when we don't have much to do. And another one that's big for me is managing people who are working remotely. It's, I've always been a believer that collaboration is always easier and better when you're looking over a cube wall or walking down a hall than when you have to send an email or set up a Zoom call. I collaborate, you know, working remotely is important, and I agree with it for the right now, but trying to get people back is difficult for us. So, and let's see, the other big problem that COVID has had for us is just making, because all of our customers are working remotely, not only do they not answer their phones, they necessarily won't answer their email. It's really hard to get them to make decisions and collaborate with their team members to get the stuff to us so that we have enough time to produce it. They're just wait, and then just drop it on us at the last minute. So our deadlines continue to condense, and I think those are, you know, problems that are not limited just to our business. It seems to be pretty much everybody I talk to.
Thanks, Gary. Tom, do you have any initiatives or management initiatives you would like to talk about?
Well, you know, Gary touched on the one that's probably, I think, you know, our number one priority, and that's when we look at our lead gen process or prospecting processes. You know, our team struggled pretty significantly in the beginning, just trying to identify where are people. Are they at home? Are they in the office? How do you know where they're at? How, you know, how do we, you know, and then how do you interact with them? You know, I think a lot of our sales teams have built a lot of what they do around building a personal relationship. And it's pretty hard to build personal relationship when you're just on the phone, even if it's a video call like this. You know, you miss that interaction, and it's much harder, I think, to progress through the sales process. So, you know, we've spent a lot of time with our teams on that, coming up with new ways to communicate, ways to get people's attention, ways to figure out where they're physically located, and then how, you know, deciding how we're going to reach out to them. So that's that one. And then, of course, the other big initiative for us has been employee health. It worries me every day that, you know, we're back running. We've got a lot of people in the building, and just making sure we're keeping them safe as always, but now with another added twist to, you know, making sure we're trying to keep them safe from COVID as well. So.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's a different aspect to this working remotely and working. I mean, I'm an old guy, right? I've been around for a long time, and I know I've worked for managers that if they couldn't see you, you weren't doing a damn thing, right? And this, I think, has proven different. I think you have to extend some trust to people, and I think that individuals have to some degree maybe loved the flexibility of working from their home office. Now, that is provided they don't have young kids that you know are not in school and they're trying to manage that. But you've saved a lot of time not commuting in the morning. That's created some flexibility for people, and clearly there's such thing as Zoom burnout. But you know, I think we're going to figure out how to use this technology more going forward. Now, Gary and perhaps even Tom Moore and what he just said touched on this issue of revenue generation. And I'll tell you what, if people don't want to talk to you, they won't talk to you today. And having a salesperson be able to figure that out how to get that person to interact with you when they, especially a millennial, they got all the damn information anyway, and they're on, Instagram and searching all corners of the web, and they know a lot about you, know a lot about your business, and they don't need to talk to a salesperson at the same point they used to. And so figuring out how to do that, I haven't met anybody that really has the answer yet. Part of it is social media, and part of it is just out there working as hard as you can, trying to find what it takes to get people to interact with.
And Brian, did you have anything about initiatives you've addressed in your company?
Yeah, I do. Maybe we start with the first question. Mike, where's that accent from?
Oh, I grew up in Western Kansas, about 15 miles north of the Oklahoma border. So I've been in Minnesota a long time, but that's where I'm from.
Good. So I think that the challenges are an aging workforce. That's really going to be, it's been a challenge for an up and coming challenge for a long time, and it's not going to get any better. COVID's not going to help it. Managing that workforce, there's as we kind of hit earlier, there's busy months or weeks. Now, isn't it funny that we're judging business by weeks instead of months? But there's busy months or busy weeks, and there's those that aren't. And you go from people stretching out to an 8-hour day on their piece of equipment to working Saturday and Sunday the next week. So it's tough to get the winning hand through that labor piece, and you can't afford to lose any talent. But there are certainly times where you look back and you say, how long can I hold that talent if I can't support it with the business? So I think that's certainly going to be a huge challenge. It's changed to a bigger degree. So that's one. New sales, it's kind of been touched on here. I think getting decision makers to get together on the other side and make a decision. The easiest thing for people to do is the same thing they've done before, good, bad, or indifferent. And so getting a group of people from a prospective client that you're trying to woo in, they're not together, they're not interacting. It was brought up about proofs, kind of, or at least that's the way I took it here. We're seeing such a large lag on proof approval. We send out a hard copy proof. It ends up at 3 different homes around the Twin Cities and maybe even out of state before we get proof approval back, and that doesn't change the due date. So what starts out as a project that seems like you have plenty of time on, proofing that might have taken less than a day before could be 2 or 3 days out, and that's happening more regular. Paper several times has been a challenge for us. Getting a large paper order in, and whether it's trucking issues or there's actual manufacturing issues, I'm not real sure, but we've had the larger projects several times where paper didn't come when it was supposed to come, and we've kind of gotten accustomed to that just-in-time delivery. So all of those items have kind of created the new challenges, and the last one I'll hit is dealing with this technology, right? So I too am an old guy, but I don't like this. I'm going to do better with my client in person, and it's what I want to push our sales staff to do. Is we need to give them more of a reason to buy from us than just a price, than just we all do the same thing. And through COVID, there's certainly winners and there's losers. Everybody on this call probably has just a little bit different niche, and depending on who your client base was leading into it is really ultimately how you've been impacted through COVID. So everybody that's speaking today sounds like we're pretty well level, but I know that there are many other printers, and I talk to a lot, that are out there that they have that mid-range small business, mid-range business that was affected big by COVID, and general sales down 30-40%. I've heard that 50%. I've heard that from other printers. So the challenge that we're talking about isn't necessarily the same on this call. It sounds like we're all kind of weathering through this pretty good, but generally speaking, I know there's a lot more out there that are hurt a lot worse, and I don't have a good suggestion. So it's come to work every day, put your chin up and try something. Get out and do something. Make an effort. Don't sit and wait for the phone to ring. It's not going to.
Thanks, Brian. You know, as I mentioned before, a lot of our questions kind of intertwined with each other, and that's okay. You know, that last question is more about internal management initiatives. And Rick, I think you got the next question more about industry matters.
Yeah, and I'm not sure some of that hasn't been answered by the
Right.
here, but again, if we can think broader and maybe even longer, you know, COVID and or just the state of the industry moving forward, there's some challenges and opportunities out there. Is there anything to add to some of the things you guys have already mentioned as we think about, you know, just the industry in general? I think, Mike, you talked about retail. That was a challenge pre-COVID now and will be thereafter. Is there things like that you could add to the conversation in the industry standpoint?
Yeah, I think I would just add related to that, Rick, and of course it's nothing new in the printing industry that, you know, you buy the latest, greatest press and tomorrow you find out there's another latest, greatest press. And the next day there's another one after that. When do you pull the capital trigger and when do you sit and wait? And I think for us, at least, looking at the retail side, and it gets to a little bit of what Brian mentioned about this short term, you can't find people, you're trying to get things approved. You're getting to the point that it may be that this exacerbates digital's place in the market. Now, for us on the wide format side of the business, so instead of running, and we've seen this happening, and I think it's accelerating because of COVID, is the move away from large flexo or large big litho runs. And these new high-speed single-pass digital presses are pretty amazing in what they do. And their technology, the print quality, the color quality, it's pretty remarkable. And it's expensive. And if you want to play the game, your focus has to be on technology and what technology can do to help keep you at the forefront of the competitive factor in this environment with all the changes that are going on. So, I think that is it's always been one, but it's even more so now, Rick.
Yeah, we'll come back to that question a little later too, Mike. But Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm
okay. I
think I'd be cautious. We're in an industry that we've all chased a little bit different marketplace time to time, and it is a very, very capital intensive industry. It's hard to be a fantastic large press print shop and also be a great digital shop and be a marketing company and be a sign shop and all of those things. I think individually, it's probably everybody looking at what your marketplace is, taking a step back, look at your client base, and first try to identify, do I still have a viable client base? Who when the COVID is done, when it shakes out to whatever it becomes, which clients do you believe are still going to be there and at what capacity, and which ones are truly gone, or just going to have to shift their own business? And if they shift, does that help you or hurt you? So capital intensive right off the bat. I think you got to be cautious enough to say, who are my clients? What are my opportunities? Who's asking for what products and what services? And we all fight that game that technology, there's plenty of technology I'd love to go out and buy tomorrow. It's just tough to afford it all. So you got to really be pretty focused, and especially now, and we're going to talk about cash later, I think, but cash is king. You got to be careful.
Tom, do you have anything to add?
Well, not really. I think I agree with what the other two have said, and I think that's going to be the big challenge for us, is how do we balance, right? I mean, right now the desire is to try to capture as much revenue as you can, and so I think there's a temptation out there to start buying capabilities and equipment because there's opportunity for revenue. But to Brian's point, I think you really have to balance that with the long-term cash needs of the company, and not the idea of, well, if we, and just because you buy a piece of equipment doesn't mean that the revenue comes with it, right? You see, it's now more than ever, I think it's more important to have a plan around your business. And if you're going to add capabilities, I think you really need to have a really good expectation of what it's going to take to acquire business with it. And it's not just buying a new press or an inkjet press or anything like that. So I think that it's harder than ever on us as the business leaders to balance the desire to go out and try to acquire new opportunities by buying equipment and maintaining the business from a cash standpoint.
Okay, Gary, do you have anything?
I agree with everything that the guys have said. I look at Tom Moe mentioned the travel industry earlier, and the travel industry is one that we've been active in also, and that has just stopped. Now we're seeing a couple of small things coming back, but I think the travel industry is going to look completely different as it emerges than it does today. It'll be real interesting to see. We got to look at it in new ways and try to figure out where it's going and proactively get there before our neighbors do, so we can, get in early and see what we can do to add some value and be relevant for our travel industry customers. That's going to be tricky.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Shifting gears to a new question, but still somewhat related. This had to do with organic growth, and the question was really posed that organic growth was really tough before COVID hit. I've had a number of clients over the years. I remember one in particular that was so excited that they had gained like 32 customers one year, but they had also lost like 28 and they stayed flat. So organic growth is tough. And Tom, what do you think management should consider today? I mean, you guys have been talking about trying to get your salespeople to communicate and get out there more, but what are some things to think about around organic growth, or how to address this, or other ways to grow?
Growth was, it's always been hard to grow, whether it's organic growth or any type of growth has been hard the last few years. The COVID pandemic has really brought to light, though, I think an interesting fact, in that there seems to be some areas out there that are more resistant to decline, right? I think everybody on the call has talked about at least one piece of their business that hasn't really been negatively impacted, whether it's, box in a box, corrugated packaging, food packaging especially seems to be going really strong right now. So I think from our standpoint, we're trying to coach our salespeople in looking at companies and or businesses that seem to be resistant, at least to some point, resistance to either a pandemic recession or a financial recession, and spending more time in those areas and less time. I had one of our reps say, I used to spend the better part of my day chasing business in this vertical, and all the business that I've got is now stopped. So I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. And but over here, this business seems to be not only stable but even growing, and spending more time in those areas. We've asked our sales team to become more business development style with their selling, and not necessarily getting an account and loving it to death over the next several years, but getting new business, get it opened, and building better teams inside to actually do that account management, and let the sales team go sell, and try not to tie them up with paperwork and administrative stuff. And really, getting them focused and maybe even incented to increase just the new business growth. My guys are sick of hearing me tell the story of churn, but we know that every year there's X% of our business that isn't going to repeat, even from our repeat customers, right? Somebody did a project and maybe it's got an 18-month shelf life, who knows? But every year when we start our sales planning, we talk about how much business are we planning not to get back. So if we sold X, what percentage do we expect not to come back just because of churn? And that's a big deal for us. You're right. We get excited, and we opened 46 new accounts last year, and we stayed flat. And that's a reality. So I think from our standpoint, the only way we're going to see growth is to continue to look at more business development style activities.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, anything to add?
Well, you know, I think, again, as it comes to revenue generation, which is so important for each one of us, I think we have to go back to school on it. That's what we're doing at Myers. We're trying to understand social media like never before. And it comes to this idea of the fact that we've got millennials that have moved into buying roles, whether they're merchandisers or brand managers or in actual procurement positions. And they are just so adept at using the internet and leveraging social media in all its forms, be it LinkedIn, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, whatever. And I think that this idea of organic growth, you've got to go back to school and understand the power of social media, because the old days of producing a sales sheet, creating a simple case study, and maybe pitching an article to a trade journal and getting that printed, and then buying an ad and putting those together, and maybe a little trade show activity, and that gave you this you might have had some direct mail in there. That was the marketing mix, right? And today is marketing. You throw a lot of that away, throw it out the door. You got to start over. And I really think for success, social media and social media leverage, and having salespeople that understand it and how to leverage it, how to get a customer to say something, not just a referral, how to get a customer to say something, post it out there on the internet for others to read, to have somebody who has a problem say, you know, that's exactly what I got going on. I searched for this, and then you get a ping from somebody. So I would say that's different. And I think it's really important for those of us that grew up under a different environment to understand the power of social media and what it can do for our business.
Thank you, Mike. Gary?
Well, growing our business is the easy part. I just put it squarely on the back of our VP of Sales, Todd Matuski, who's probably on this call. He's probably listening. So I'm just saying that lovingly and kiddingly, of course.
Gary, I think he just got off and he went to go make a sales call, folks.
Or freshen up his resume.
You know, that's all we talk about as a group, every week, every day. You know, what are we going to do? Are we, you know, we're always got our eyes open. We're always looking for opportunities. I've had lots of organic growth throughout the years and lots of growth through acquisition. So, you know, that's just in our DNA, and we're always looking, and we're always looking for something that's going to help us succeed, you know, and I'm responsible for 250 people here, and it's a, you know, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. So, but we're trying to figure out what it is that we're going to look like in 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. Going more than 3 years is very difficult, but we spend a lot of time on that, and we spend a lot of time on trying to figure out how we can differentiate ourselves in the marketplace, as we all do. And, you know, it's a never-ending story, and we're just, you know, I feel good how we're positioned in our business, generally speaking. We can always do better, and we're always looking at new ways of doing things. And the only thing constant in our world is change. And we're doing everything that we can to push forward and remain relevant to our customers.
Thanks, Gary. And Brian, any last thoughts on this topic?
I'm just going to agree. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. I'll take the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, several of you have mentioned issues with staffing and trying to maintain the workforce. It's getting a little more difficult. As you've managed COVID and the economy and you know, people that are there taking on different tasks or people working remotely or whatever it's been, how have you guys handled keeping up employee morale, keeping people motivated? Can you guys speak to that issue? Mike, maybe you want to go first?
Well, I would say we recently restored everyone's salary. That was probably the biggest morale booster. that we could have done. Of those employees that we cut back, we got to a point that we just felt like it was beyond the window of expectations as to what we could continue with. And we're going to manage it more from a staffing level now going forward. We've had furloughs and everything else. But I think, Rick, the real answer for me is communication. We've gone out of our way to communicate monthly business results, to communicate COVID issues, to communicate anything we can where there's that gap. As Gary mentioned, you can't just look over the cube, you can't just stand up and walk down the hallway. You got to do it differently. So we're relying a lot on printed media, in terms of virtual media as it relates to Teams type calls or Zoom, and email blasts to our whole organization more frequently with information about the business, what's going on, decisions we're making, why we're making the decisions we're making. And I can tell you that we've had feedback from employees who've said they really appreciate it. In the midst of the uncertainty, having the company communicate to them even more so than beyond what you would think you would need to do has been a very positively received among our work organization, our team.
Great. Brian?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, I could repeat a lot of what Mike just said. When COVID hit, we pulled our group together, and we shut down all the equipment. We had many meetings, like probably once a week, that maybe went to once every 2 weeks, and now it's monthly. So communication is the strategy. Everything we've talked about so far has been technology, equipment, cash, but when you get down to it, we're an industry of people, and we all have, probably everybody on this call has that exemplary group that lives and breathes the company, and they want every form of success, and they put their heart and soul into it every day, and balancing that with home life, family, COVID now, the needs of the customer, it's certainly it's huge, and so I look at it and say we can't communicate enough. We couldn't have enough meetings and small little celebrations, and even those have been affected now. It's hard to bring cupcakes in and celebrate or do anything like that. Those gatherings are different, so it's certainly been difficult, but it's communication. When COVID hit, we did cut down to a 36-hour work week. We pushed that up to 32, we went to 32-hour work week, push it up to 36-hour work week when we got the PPP money, and have since have, I think, almost all people back to full time, and again, it was a big request to ask people to take less home while they're struggling with family life. So so many people have stepped up to make this a success, and I know that's not just this company. I know it's most companies, if not every company on this call. So,
Gary, you have anything?
I'm echoing what those guys are doing. In April, we started a weekly newsletter, revived that, and every Thursday morning it goes out via email with hard copies posted for everybody that does not have a computer in their area. We also really, trying to focus on the positives and some of the things that many of us take for granted in our business. Others that work in our business have no idea what it is that we're doing, and it's been amazingly effective on sharing information. Just the weekly newsletter. It's kind of a hassle putting it out every week, and me going after people for copy and for articles, but it's been a real group effort, and I hardly write any of it. I just make sure it gets done, and it's been a real great tool for all of these middle and senior managers to work on it with interviews. And then also another one that we do that's really good is whenever we have a customer compliment or complaint, or particularly in a compliment, is that we do track that and publish it for everybody to see. And Yeah, and that's been real helpful. So I think, as you guys were saying, we've really stepped up the communication with all of our employees and just trying to keep everybody to just kind of relax and stick to our knitting and, move forward. So.
Tom, did you have anything?
It's really about the same. I think, the easiest way for us to increase morale was to bring everybody back. I don't think as of a couple of weeks ago, we don't have anybody furloughed anymore. We're back not only full time, but we've got a lot of extra stuff going on too, as far as overtime and things like that. And that's helped, but now we have to manage that too, because we've got some people that have, recently mentioned, well, kind of missing my week off here and there, but it kind of in jest, but we, came back fast and strong, and we didn't get to manage the business on the way up as much as we would have liked. And so it's been good. It just really reiterates how much you have to communicate to people, though, because just the conversation that was going on in the background, and what people didn't know, they were filling in the blanks. And so we've done the same thing. We try to communicate with them at least weekly, and as often as we possibly can about changes, and just to help them manage their expectations too. And that's seemed to help. But it was kind of sad. We didn't get to do some things that have been long-standing traditions that everybody looks forward to. Our end of the summer picnic, we had to cancel that because of COVID. And our chili cook-off has been canceled so far because of COVID. We're hoping we can reinstate stuff like that, because I think it's important to take a little bit of time out during the work week and have some camaraderie and thank people for their effort and things like that. And it's missed by the employees, and I think it's stuff that we miss doing as well. So
Thanks, Tom.
Mel, if I could throw something in here,
sure.
If you say, I think all of us kind of have a sense of where we came from the very last week in February, and how we've gotten our businesses to this point, and we've kind of got this new sense of normal. If a guy like Fauci, or depending upon what you believe the CDC is putting out every day, we're heading for another round of this thing. And as it gets cold and people are indoors and more families are together indoors, there's going to be a resurgence in COVID, is what they're saying, and it's going to blow up. And how that, it's been hard enough to manage employees, taking temperatures, ensuring our workplace is safe. But I think we're in for a more difficult round of this, because most likely we're not going to have a vaccine until sometime in the early spring at best. And it may be longer. And so I think each of us need to be thinking right now, my goodness, what do I not know? What would I do differently if all of a sudden we really did have 10 employees come down with COVID and maybe expose one department to COVID? How are we going to deal with that? So that's a question our leadership team has been trying to at least do some initial thinking on. What's coming here that might be a surprise that we've kind of set back now, and we think we know what's going on, and we're really going to get another round of this?
It's a good point, Mike. I guess it's almost like we might have a do-over. Not that anybody wants to have a do-over, but what would you have done differently looking back? Well, we might have to do it again, is your point.
Yeah.
Just to shift gears here to a different topic, and that's cash. I heard someone say cash is king earlier, and that's always been true. So Gary, I'm going to pose this question to you first. When COVID hit back in March, I remember the biggest concern people had was, of course, cash, and are my customers going to pay me? Are they going to start stretching me to 90 days, 180 days? Are we going to get paid at all? And that was the really big concern. And then, of course, the PPP money came through, and it seemed like people were paying their bills. At least that's what we saw. But now that the PPP money has been, I'll say, used up, what are your thoughts about cash management going forward? And should we all be a little more cautious, or what are your thoughts, Gary?
Well, The cash, of course, we can be the greatest company in the world. We run out of cash. We have a big problem. So, of course, we monitor our cash usage and all that very carefully. I think when the COVID thing first hit, we tried to be proactive and we right-sized our workforce and eliminated our temps and did everything that we could to conserve the cash that we had. The PPP money has been a huge help for cash flow purposes. We have not seen any more difficulty in our collections due to COVID. Initially we had a couple of people call and say, we want to stretch you out. And we basically said no, you know, but it's because you don't ask, don't get. And so we've taken one, but that was from last year. That's a pretty good hit that we're actively working hard on collecting. But other than that, our bad debt has been very small and our collections have actually been very good. So we were really fearful about how it was going to play itself out, but we have not been impacted significantly at this point. And our cash flow is great, and we do everything that we can to conserve our money. At the same token is that, you know, if we feel like we need to invest to continue to manage our business and properly, we do spend the money. So it's a balance, no question.
Brian?
I'd agree with Gary. In the start, we were concerned, were clients going to pay? There were some big jobs that we had just completed, and they were out there. And actually, we have a couple of New York clients, so that's where my major concern came, and they all paid. We had a client file bankruptcy to the tune of $8,000, so that's been our hit through COVID here, and I call that a success. I don't see the collections changing yet, but the PPP money, I said to many people when we first got it, it gave us the cash in whatever month we got. I don't even remember, right? April. It gave us the cash in April that we would have collected maybe through October. Well, I said that for about 2 or 3 months, and now we're here. So I think it is about the level point, and now the cash flow of the company has to be able to support their purchasing. I think companies have made the adjustments to let their purchasing change to what their cash flow can allow. So I don't think there's greater risk, but I think we're all seeing downtick in orders. If you haven't gotten new clients, or if you haven't had a merger or acquisition, if you haven't had some other revenue stream change it, you're down right now. And I think those clients that's part of the adjustment. So I think we'll get paid for what's being done now. That's my general sense.
Tom, anything to add on cash management?
I think we got very conservative right away, which I think was a good thing. We took a look at everything. We took a look at subscription services. We took a look at maintenance programs. We took a look at everything, and we had some stuff that we deemed as nice to have and not need to have, and we cut that spending out early to preserve. And I, now that, to Brian's point, now that we've gotten to October, I think I think everybody agrees that we all had to make the right choice May, June, July in order to get here. So I'm feeling pretty good. We have not seen a drop off in our clients paying us or stretching us out. It's actually, we probably improved a little bit, a couple of days improvement over the time. And so far, knock wood, we haven't had anybody hit us with anything severe. So it's been good.
Well, and maybe I'd just jump in and add to that. It goes pretty much maybe without saying, you want to keep your banker as close to you as you can, right? And up to date. And if there was ever a need to try to forecast as best you can and be straight up honest with your banker on your cash position and what you see, and then actually perform as close as possible to that, boy, that's a good thing, because bankers got lots of other trouble. Let them go deal with some of the problems in the real estate market today, especially, let's say, the office space business. You know, you got a situation where that's an area in turmoil, and there's going to be some banks that are going to own some hotels and maybe some restaurants and who knows what else before it's over with. So I think, you know, really in terms of managing cash, keep your financial manager or your CFO, you know, boy, right close to you, understand, talk, interact, you know, strategize together and share that with your banker to keep your business in a good position with that aspect.
Thank you, Mike. Rick, you ready to shift to another question?
Yeah, a couple of you mentioned earlier the remote workforce issue. I want us to kind of look at that issue, talk about it, not only currently, but what do you see going forward? Do you see this hanging around? And do you see everybody getting better at it and actually being an asset instead of a reaction to the chaos that we've all gone through? Maybe speak to some of the visioning around the remote access and anything else. Brian, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. So certainly there was a group of people in our industry that they had to come in. Somebody had to push the button on the press. Somebody had to put the paper in the folder. Somebody had to load the skid and push the pallet onto the truck and then drive the truck somewhere. So there's the largest group of our industry. They had to come to work day in, day out. And a whole sidebar to that, which I won't get into, is the struggle for them and their families and trying to raise kids, school age kids at home and whatever. But we'll leave that out for now. But the people in the front office that were able to work from home, we have transitioned now. So I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. We're being as cautious as we possibly can, but we've asked everybody to come back to work now. And we've moved offices, we've moved desks, we've spread people apart, we've put up the partitions, we've bought air purifiers. We've done what we believe is everything we can. We've put in policies that we're not going to have groups visiting at a press or at a folder or at the water cooler, you know, that people keep their distance. We have had probably 4, I think is the number, COVID scares. So you get a call, and certainly here's all of our biggest fear, right? You get that call, whether it's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday, saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know, my brother-in-law tested positive and we had dinner with him on Tuesday night, whatever, right? So it's luckily none of those panned out to be a problem, but certainly the challenge that we're going to have is we could lose a department. We could lose a handful of people at once, and all of us are sitting right on that piece. And I think the strongest asset we have, and as an industry, the best way to work through it is we need to find our strategic partners, the people on this call that we can call on and feel comfortable that I can put some of my work in somebody else's shop and do that for a week or two, find the press time, find the bindery time, and still feel comfortable that I can bring it back and not have somebody shop that client. So right now is a time that we need to come together and kind of be able to do that with each other and without fear of just handing a client off to somebody else to go on. So I don't know if that totally answered. I kind of went off on a side, but there we go.
Okay, thanks. Mike?
Well, I kind of said what I said earlier, you know, and I'd reiterate it. I would kind of go a different position than Brian shared, and I think I understand the desire to get people back together, but I don't think it's worth the risk. And I don't think it's the issue of COVID is so deadly. I think we've learned that that's not the case. But I think it's an undue risk that I just don't want to take with our business. It is so competitive today. We play in a market with so many players, and technology has lowered the barriers to entry to some degree, especially with this wide format digital work that's out there, and the corrugators buying the high speed presses for retail competing with us. If we had a problem in our plant because we had a COVID outbreak and we had to send a number of people home that we couldn't have the die cutters or the operators, I just don't think we're willing to take that chance. And so we're going to keep people working remotely, and we're going to manage it that way.
Gary?
Me?
Yeah, Gary. Sorry.
Well, I don't really have anything to add. We do have some people who are able to work from home effectively, no question about that. And I support that if the situation is right. But I just like having that camaraderie and having people close by and all working together whenever we can. I too have that fear of, if one of our web press crews comes down with COVID, that's a problem, But we have done a pretty good job, I think, as we've been of cross-training people to go where, to have some flexibility in what their job responsibilities are. And we've had very good luck at training people that can move to many different functions and go where the work is and where we're busy. So we'll have our digital web press operator will run the envelope press, or he'll be over doing laminating, so everybody kind of knows what the score is, and the people that we have here have really been good about giving us flexibility. We have several people that work off site, but I like having them here. That's just me. I'm old.
Okay. Tom, do you have anything to add?
Maybe just this. I mean, we're in the same boat. We're trying to get people that don't have to be in the office to do their job remote if we can. But but to Brian's point, it's hard to do that. We can't operate the machines remotely. So we need the majority of our people here. So one of the things that we did early on is we looked at critical functions and said, do we have any critical functions where if somebody was to get sick, it would be a real problem for us with the business. And we identified those and who were able to do those. And we started splitting people up. So, if we had a piece of equipment that we only had 2 certified operators on, we made sure they weren't working on the same shift together, or they weren't working together as a team, just to try to keep important people separated and as much as possible. And it seems, it seems to be working. We've had a couple of phone calls too, where, hey, I got to stay home for a couple of days, and everything's worked out. That's been our most fortunate thing. But since March 27th, when we stayed running, it's been the thing that worries me the most every week is what happens if you get that phone call and all of a sudden you got to shut down and decontaminate, and you go offline for a week. How do you deal with that? So it's definitely one of the biggest concerns that we've gotten. But we're not in a situation like a lot of people where we can have 50% of the workforce work from home. Maybe we're lucky if 10% of our workforce can work from home.
I could add some more back in. So we had increased our cleaning budget. So we're spending probably close to $2,500 a month more to have a daily cleaning from our cleaning crew, facility, whatever. And on top of that, the first shift that shows up in the morning, we have a crew of people that will go around and wipe things down. So we're trying to hit those surfaces 2 times a day at minimum, and then going beyond that at shift change. So doing everything we can, but again, the majority of our workforce is already here full time. So in our case, we're talking about 65 people, and there's maybe 5 to 10 that could work from home. And if it were 10, there's 5 of those that could do it effectively. And there's my issue. The ability to make a mistake in our industry is just over the top. I say all the time, we need 13 people to do everything perfect, and we get a job delivered to what the client wants to be right. And one of those 13 does it wrong, we are reprinting it. And part of that comes with that human interaction. Just walking the floor, seeing something on the floor changes what we do or where we go on the next step. And when those people aren't here to see that, or they don't overhear another conversation, or all those sort of pieces, it's affected the ability to put a quality, or not quality, I don't think it's a quality issue, to put a product on the street exactly as the client expected it to be.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'm just looking at the clock and the questions we have left, so maybe bounce around a little bit in the time we have remaining, and we got to get back to Steve to see if there's any questions chatted in we should address. But this next one had to do with, I'll say, lean manufacturing or continuous improvement. And Rick, you can add to this too. It was something that we were asked to ask the panel, and you know, we all talked about controlling costs, and revenues have been down, so we've had to do certain things, and you guys have mentioned labor and keeping an eye on that. But any of the four of you use lean manufacturing or continuous improvement? If so, talk about that. If not, what are you doing on the cost side of things? And Rick, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, and I just think as the last few months of COVID has unfolded, there's a been a chaos and things. Established programs may have gone by the wayside, but did we fight that? Did we hang on to these things to just not give up the gains we've made in prior years or months? So speak to that issue maybe.
Well,
Mike,
I'd be
yeah,
glad
go
to
ahead.
go. Yeah, I'd be glad to go. I think that, you know, my impression is of all the, and there's a lot of great quality and lean improvement tools out there. But for me, 5S is one of the most practical, hands-on thing that a team can come together with and really make some progress. So what we did was, well, we've had this going on for about 18 months, specifically in this area. We've continued through this COVID experiment, so to speak, with our 5S teams around. We looked at our cost centers and we said, is this cost center in line with estimating or out as a first view of all that? And we picked three specific areas: our digital printing on the retail side, our Zoom die cutting, and label mounting on the label side, on plate mounting. And we put 5S teams together in those because each of those three areas we were running outside of expectations, anywhere from 7 to 18% in relationship to where our estimates were. And the 5S team on an ongoing basis on those items have brought all three of those cost centers underneath by as much as 5% where we were estimating. So we've seen some really nice, documented, measured improvement come from 5S work, just that cleaning, sorting, shining, systematically looking at what we're doing and organizing the work to be more effective. And our documented cost center improvement really speaks to the results we've achieved.
Thanks.
Gary?
Sure. I don't really have anything to add. I think that all of us are working on continuous improvement programs all the time and doing what we can to continuously lower our costs, monitor our spoilage, and you know, for us, it's high trust and ISO and all the other certifications that we have to have in order to get access to our customers. It takes a lot of effort on an ongoing basis. And, you know, I feel pretty good about how, what we do and how we're positioned, but it does not come, you know, I'm sure it's not that it pays, it doesn't, you know, I mean, how was I going to say, it doesn't cost, it pays. Okay. But we sure, it seems like we do spend a lot of time and effort and a lot of our resources and teams and taking them offline and having them involved in auditing and all of that. And it's solid. It works well for us.
Hey Gary, I'm actually curious, Gary, do you have full-time people to help you with those certifications and get you through some of that?
We have one full-time quality person that kind of oversees it. Most of the high trust and some of that stuff all comes through our IT group and data group. But we have one person that does pretty much ISO monitoring and changes out the teams. You know, gives them training and stuff, do a lot of that internally. And then I know we have at least one external ISO audit a year. That was just a month or so ago, so.
Yeah. How about you, Tom? Yeah. Do you have full-time people to do that?
No, part-time people. We pull people in from the departments to to help us monitor that. And you know, yeah, we're I think we're the same as everybody else. We're looking at our programs. One of the things that we did early on when the business slowed down, we used that as an opportunity to redo our SOP manuals. We, you know, making sure that everybody was on the same page, and you know, if we didn't have necessarily work in the shop for everybody to do, instead of sending them home, we asked them to go through and update all of the department manuals and things like that, which was helpful. We found some things that we had overlooked, that we had, you know, changes that had been made that hadn't been documented the right way, and things like that. And you know, we communicated early on, now more than ever this year, because of the, you know, because of the situation that we've been in, that, you know, as much as we monitor and try to eliminate spoilage and off quality stuff, it's really important now, because, you know, anything that we have to rework comes straight off the bottom line. And when the bottom line is shrunk, it hurts a lot more. So they've done, our guys have done a good job. Our teams have done a really good job of staying in front of it and controlling that. And it worked well for us to be able to provide work hours for people and have them go through their manuals.
Rick, looking at our remaining questions, anything you want to go to next with our remaining time too?
Well, somebody mentioned earlier, I think it's maybe Mike, about the M&A. Maybe what are you seeing? What are you feeling? That type of thing. Mel, you could probably expound on that question more. I want to hit that one for sure.
Yeah, just wondering if you see it as what we saw was pre-COVID, a lot of activity. During COVID, the first 3 months, it went kind of quiet, but now it's picking up again. So wondering if your companies are thinking of this as a strategy, and do you think the industry is going to continue to be active in this area?
I'll jump into that first. So we made an acquisition last fall. We were looking at another one prior to COVID, and we kind of slowed down on it. We know that we are going to be acquired. We're looking for more, so we're out looking for deals, and I don't know. It's going to play a big part. It's pretty hard to grow organically, so it's going to be either right size to what you will be, or have some superstar salespeople and they're tough to come by, or do an acquisition, merger of some sort. So it's going to play a big part.
You know, Mel, I think of the old Bob Dylan song about people are crazy and times are strange. And there's so much money out there that some of the multiples that you hear people are willing to pay for acquisition targets are, for most of us, have been in this business now for a few years and have some understanding of the margins and where it's really at, scratch our heads at what's been done. You know, I happen to have some firsthand knowledge of a recent acquisition in Europe for a specialty medical packaging company where it went 15 times EBITDA. And that is the highest multiple I've heard. Now, that's not happening in the business we play in here, not necessarily in labels or in wide format printing for display work. But I think you really got to look at this thing. You have to be out there fishing. You have to be talking to people all the time, building relationships that you hope with the right partners might turn into an affordable acquisition that can really grow your business, and not one that potentially will sink it. You know, so a lot of money, a lot of people trying to do this, you know.
Right. Gary or Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just chime in that all of us, of course, are looking for sales. I think all of us have additional capacity. It gets a little bit difficult when you've got to buy the assets along with the sales. That's where it gets a little dicey. So, like I say, we've never been risk averse, and we've had lots of organic and growth through acquisition through the years, and you know, we're always looking, and there'll be one coming along. So, you know.
Mel, can you speak to that? What Gary just said, maybe the tuck-in strategy, and are we seeing more of that go on?
been a lot of that going on because, as you just said, Gary, a lot of people, what do they want? They want the sales and they probably want the people, but they don't necessarily want more equipment or another facility because you all have capacity. So yeah, we've seen a lot of tuck-ins, and to me, I even think if you're a troubling company, you still have something to sell, even though you may not have great EBITDA. Because you still have sales and customers. So we're seeing the market and the demand for that as well, and the equipment just has to be dealt with separately. Tom, we didn't give a chance for you to respond to this, but do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, it's an ongoing issue, right? I think now I'm just really, I'm way more conservative than I was than before COVID, because I'm the fear of making a bad acquisition has always been there, right? You think it's going to be a good fit. You think it's going to be something that's going to be synergistic, and you think 1 and 1 is going to equal 2, and you find out 1 and 1 equals 0.75. That's not a good strategy. And I worry now about when we're reviewing and looking at potential acquisitions of are they going to come back? Because you look back and you go, okay, things were great 2 years ago and now they're not so great. Are they going to come back? And you almost need a crystal ball more now than ever, because if you're looking at an acquisition target that made sense a year ago, it might not make sense now. So
yeah, thank you. Steve, we're coming up to almost 1 o'clock. Time's gone by fast here. I appreciate all this. It's been good conversation. Is there anything in the chat room we should be addressing?
Well, Brian Turbeville only always, brings out the questions as it relates to, not only the device he has in the back corner, that single press card maker, but I think people are wondering whether he's operating his business on that Mac too, and how that's going for him.
I can always refer back to that.
No, I know that. So there aren't any other questions, but I did want to ask that one that was remaining on our list, just as it relates to kind of the possibility of new technology. And, Gary, I think it was talking about ROI and really the kind of the need to convey hard ROI and increase the levels of personalization. That takes technology. And where do you see those technology purchases and strategies as it is to growing your business? How much of you are going to be, really developing new services to service clients in a more, maybe a different way or more effective way than current services or technologies can provide? How is that investment going to be important in the coming months? And if so, well, maybe what services are you thinking really has the best possibility to help you grow? Anybody want to take that? Gary?
I thought somebody'd say that, darn it. No, I feel pretty good about how we're positioned as far as our data and analytics and capabilities, and we're always working at our customers are always expecting more, always asking us questions. It constantly evolves, and we address it. I have a listing somewhere or a chart that has all of the software that we use in our business, and it is staggering when you see all of the software options that we currently utilize, in whether on the front end or the back end or the shipping, or pick something in our business. And that's a constantly evolving process. Those are for sure areas where we continue to spend money and grow and improve. So I don't have a better answer than that for you, really.
No problem. Thanks, Gary. How about Brian from Wallace Carlson? Where is that? The technology investment and the development of new services is important to your org.
Yeah, it's going to be important. So some of the things I said earlier, I don't want to get the wrong impression out there. we're going to spend money. We're going to go out and buy some more stuff and do some things. I don't know that we'll do that before the end of the year, but certainly into the first quarter next year. So you have to keep up. You have to stay where your client needs you to be. And kind of tie that to what I said earlier. Don't get beyond the focus of who your client is. Don't go into technology that is going to bring you this big new revenue stream, and you don't have it. You know, once you put in the equipment, you don't get the work. Find a partner up, sell some work. Everybody can understand it's a short-term gig, but there's capacity and equipment through all the shops that we're talking to today. And so we can work together and build our own internal stuff, and people would be willing to do that. So I'd say be careful and grow into the clients that you have and the things that you can predict.
Terrific. Thanks, Brian. That's terrific. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Spend your money wisely, huh?
All right. Well, Mel, any final words, or Rick?
My only final word for Brian, Tom, Gary, and Mike, I really appreciate you guys sitting in today and sharing a lot of good information and insight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay.
For having me.
Thank you.
very
And
much.
thank you, Mel and Rick, for all your preparation. There were terrific questions. Great conversation, everyone. I know I took a lot of notes. I think other people did too. So thank you so much for your time and attention today, everyone. We'll see you on the next Financial Executives call, as well as Women in Print is our next big event coming up next month. So thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Brian, Mike, see you guys.
Thank you.
Take
See you
care.
guys.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
guys.
Mike,
Thanks a lot, all.
good to see you. Mel, thanks.